Hi everybody, it's Claudia from Create with Claudia. Stay tuned because we're going to be making a fun Crumb Quilt throw pillow cover that I'm using with crumbs left over from making my latest Island Batik Ambassador project. Hi everybody, it's so nice to be back with you this month. This is my latest Island Batik Ambassador project. This is a fun month. 4 times a year we get new fabric lines from them, and this one that I got assigned to this month was called Silverado Canyon. And I fell in love with it, and I'm going to show you a couple pictures of the fabrics up close. The industry sponsor this month was Deb Tucker's Studio 180 Design. And if you've never used their tools, they have patterns, all kinds of things, but they have these great rulers that do all kinds of fun things. I was given the corner pop ruler. Here it is. Hopefully there's no shine on it. You can't see it real well. I'll put a picture up. Again, corner pop ruler. And they tell you, basically they give you free reign. You can do whatever you want with the fabric you get and the ruler you get. So this is what I came up with. I call it Riverbed. Number one, the colors are just, they reminded me they're so earthy. They're real earth tones, blues and grays and whites, and a couple of great bordering on taupes, which I really love. And then what I did, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I had this gorgeous pack of 20 half yard cuts, plus 4 accompanying yards, coordinating yards, excuse me. And I thought I really want to do something a little different. I also, from last year's Ambassador project with Deb Tucker Studio 180 Designs, I had been given the corner beam. And I thought it might be fun to tie the two together. So what I did is, and I'm going to try to show this, I'll also show some pictures online of the blocks. This one large block here is made up of 4 separate blocks. This one here is made using the corner beam tool that I got last year. And then these here, it's hard to see, I know it's hard to see and I'm showing some pictures, was made with the new corner pop ruler. And I did a lot of tinkering, measuring, trying to figure out exactly how it would fit so I would get this shape, this sort of diagonal shape. And when I looked at it after I put it all together, I thought that's pretty cool. So I decided to make a quilt out of it. Each center is a different one of the fabrics from the fabric line. And then the outer edge of each center was, they gave me 2 yards of coordinating of that. So I put that on around each one. And then the dark blue, the navy, is also part of that collection. So the strips, I had to go look it up for a second. I couldn't remember what fabric I used. This is from Island Batik's neutral line. It's called Whipped Cream, and I'm showing you a close-up. Just beautiful. It has the same kind of swirls. I thought it matched perfectly with this quilt top. Silverado Canyon was designed by Kathy Engel for Island Batik. To make the quilt, I used Aurifil thread. I pieced it with Aurifil thread. I always use that in my machine. I used Schmetz Needles in my machine. Thank you so much to them as well. And thank you so much to Hobbs batting. For this one, I used their Thermore batting. I wanted a very thin quilt, and that comes out. It's thin, but it's warm. And again, that's their Thermore, excuse me, I can't pronounce it well, Thermore batting. Thank you so much again to Deb Tucker Studio 180 Designs for their ruler this year. The corner pop ruler, I really enjoyed using that in conjunction with the corner beam that I used last year. Now, one of the things you get when you use these rulers is you have some trimmings, and that's really why I'm here today. I wanted to show you my quilt, but I also want to show you that you do have some trimmings left over. I have a lot more than this, and I wanted to do something with it. I always like to do a little companion project with my Island Batik Ambassador projects. So I came up with a crumb quilted pillow, throw pillow cover. It's very easy to do, so stick around because I'm going to show you how. All right, are you ready to do some crumb quilting? First, before I do that though, I'm going to keep you in suspense a few seconds longer. I want to show you what we need for this pillow. So to make one throw pillow, you're going to need a pillow form. Now I'm making mine 12 inches. You can make it any size you want, but this is my 12-inch throw pillow form. You need 2 pieces of backing fabric. We're making an envelope style cover, which means you have 2 pieces and you just slip it in. There's no zipper, which is fine by me, but you need 2 pieces of backing fabric, and these are cut. For a 12-inch pillow, I cut them 1 inch larger. So this piece is cut 13 inches because I have a 12-inch pillow form. I'm going to cut my backing, and my front and my top is going to be 13 inches. So it's 13 inches by 11 inches. I like, because you're going to have a little bit of overlap, and I'll show you later when we make it. You're going to have a little bit of overlap for that envelope style opening. You need a piece of backing fabric for the front of the pillow because we're going to be making the front quilted. That crumb quilting that we're going to be doing is going to be quilted. This is a quilted, crumb quilted, or I don't know exactly how I should call it, but anyway, it's going to be a quilted piece of fabric. So you need a piece cut 13 inches. Actually, I'm sorry, I cut this 14 inches square because when you quilt the front piece, it's going to shrink up just a little bit. And then you need a piece of batting. And again, for this one, you want 14 inches square. For mine, I had some Hobbs poly down left over from a quilt that I made earlier in the year. This is a little bit puffier, and I wanted that for my pillow. I wanted a little bit puffier front. So, and again, that's cut 14 by 14. So that's what we need. And then, of course, very importantly, we need our crumbs of fabric. Whoops, one more thing I forgot. Binding. I am going to bind the outside of this pillow. I'll show you at the end. I've already prepared mine. I like to use a 2.5 inch strip folded in half for my binding. You can bind this pillow however you'd like. You don't have to bind it if you don't want to. And now, last but not least, are the crumbs. And these are leftover pieces from that quilt I showed you earlier, the gorgeous Silverado Canyon fabric. All right, so let's get started with some crumb quilting. Crumb quilting is so much fun. It's like you're a kid again and you're coloring. That's how I always like to talk about it. It's also very easy to do. These are the crumbs I talked about just a few seconds ago, left over from the pillow that I made and some other things. And what we're going to do is we're going to just start sewing these pieces together. Again, crumb quilting can be any fabric, any shape, any size. A lot of people like to do it with just square shapes or rectangles. I'll do it with any shape, and then I just trim it down as I go, and I'm going to show you how I do that. These are all triangles, number one, because they're all left over from that trimming from that Deb Tucker tool, the corner pop. So we're going to just get started. I like to do mine very haphazard, just choosing different colors. Again, totally up to you. I've also done a video on just coloring all one color. So maybe making a blue piece of scrap fabric or yardage from crumbs or from scraps. So we're just going to start with these. I didn't even press these real well. They were pressed before. I'm not going to worry about any of that. We're going to start sewing. And basically, I'm just going to start picking pieces out. So why don't we try these two? I'm going to set these aside a little bit. The first thing I like to do when I'm crumb quilting, especially sort of, willy-nilly, making different shapes, I sew up my pairs first, and then I start pairing up the pairs, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to start pairing up, and I'm going to sew a whole bunch of pairs first. All right, let's pick out another one. Again, a lot of these are very similar in shape. So maybe I'll just put those like that because we're going to get an interesting shape. So I'm just going to match those two together. One thing I forgot to mention is use that 1/4 inch seam allowance. You may wonder when we trim it all down if it's going to fray or if that seam's going to split. I don't worry about it because it all gets sewn together when we make the top. So that's how I sort of avoid that, and I don't worry about that. Here's a pretty one. We're going to do, let's see, maybe this white one. We'll do that with that. Maybe pair it up like that, or maybe this time I'll do it that way. And I'm just going to keep going on this until I have a lot of pairs. There's no set number. It really depends on the size you're making. Again, I'm making this pillow we need a piece that's about 13 inches by 13 inches. So I'm going to sew up quite a few pairs on this because you will see once we pair up the pairs, if that sounds funny, it does get trimmed down. So let's say you sew this together and it's maybe 3 inches square. That probably won't be the finished size. It'll be smaller than that. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. So I always make a lot of pairs and I make a bigger piece of fabric because I can always trim it down. And honestly, I'll show you when I already have finished the top for this pillow. I I ended up having to actually add some more because I underestimated how many to do. So always err on the side of making too many pairs. Alright, so I just sewed a few here together. I'm just going to show you these. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to press these open. Clip these apart. You can see I'm just going to make a small piece here for you today. Like I said, I've already made the top for the pillow. But I want to show you this process because it is a great scrap buster and it's lots of fun. And if you really like playing with colors and fabrics, I love crumb quilting. I gotta say, it's so liberating. You don't have to worry, or at least I don't have to worry about it. And I worry a lot about different things. So you can see how the shapes are sort of funny looking at this point. I'm gonna go press these really quickly, and then I'm gonna show you how I trim them up and get them ready to sew the next part. Alrighty, so here they are. Just so you get an idea, I'm gonna lay them out a little bit so you can see the different shapes. They definitely aren't ready to, you definitely need to trim them down at this point. I'm just going to show you some different ones I made. Little piece, I might need a longer piece, you never know. Anyway, you get the idea. So here's what I'm going to start with. Now I'm going to set these aside and work with two of them. I'm going to set a few of these aside, I should say. We'll start with this one. We'll do an easier one, I think. Let's see. Move these out of the way. Okay. So we're gonna, I think I want to pair these two pairs up, and then you just start playing around with them and seeing how you would like to pair them up. But this is where you want to trim first. Now, luckily, these pieces are all nicely cut because they were cut from a ruler, so they have nice straight edges. Once we get bigger pieces, you'll see how I have to trim it down. But I want to get rid of those pieces there. So let me get my ruler and my rotary cutter. I just like to start with nice, even edges. Best thing is you don't have to worry about any points, anything like that. Yeah, I don't care if the points are sharp or not, they're all going to get dulled. See, this one barely needs any cutting. And I hate to cut off the fabric now because you will be trimming it up later. Put this aside. So we're going to go ahead and sew those two up. And see, they're not even, and you'll notice that, and that's okay. I might shift it a little bit. Once you make a few of these, you start realizing how you want to put them together. And I'm just going to sew down this edge, again using that 1/4 inch seam allowance and lining up those two straight edges I just trimmed. Alright, so let's pair up another one. Let's see. I think I'll save that one for later in case we need a really long piece somewhere. That's sort of interesting. I kind of like that. Or I could put it like that again. Maybe I'll do that one like that. Yeah, or we could put another blue. I like that blue. Here we go. I love that blue. Let me do that. Here we go. I'm going to do it this way. So again, we're just going to trim up. This side actually doesn't need any trimming. That's the nice thing is sometimes you'll find that some sides don't need any trimming. This side I'll trim up a little bit. And then I'm just going to sew these together like that. Okay, let's pair up a few more. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through these, but you can get the idea of what we're going to do. After I'm done pairing them up and sewing them, I'm going to take them over to my machine and press these out so that we're ready to make the piece even bigger. Because you can see how they're starting to get bigger and bigger pieces. Okay, so now here are my 4 pieces. They're all pressed together. You can see how it's just getting bigger and bigger. And actually there are 5 pieces. I miscounted that. I love that light blue fabric. Maybe you can see it here a little bit better. So now you can see the pieces are also a little more oddly shaped. So we're going to have to do a lot more trimming. So now we're just going to keep pairing them up. We have one extra. I'll leave that one the reason I'm leaving that one out, it's a little bit longer, so I can use that later. Sometimes your pieces are going to get longer, but let's do these two here. And just sort of see how, okay, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pair them up on this edge. So now you can see where I really need to trim up this piece. This piece is fine. And I'm just going to trim off this edge. So there you go. You can keep this for later if you really want to go crazy and keep sewing all these little pieces you cut off, or you can throw this away, whatever you want to do with it. But now you see how I have two nice edges, and I'm going to join those together along this edge, and then we're going to come back and do this one too, and I'll show you how I do that one. All right, so I have these two left. And this one, and again, this one's that longer piece that I may just hold off a little bit on that, and so I'll put that there. So let's see, I could put them together like this, maybe, you know what, I think I'm going to do them this way. Maybe, because I want a nice, I'm trying to get a little bit straighter edge so that I don't have to cut off quite so much. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to trim this off a little, well, I think I'll leave that. I'm going to trim this side off. See, I kind of talk to myself when I'm sewing, and especially when I'm crumb quilting, because I can tell myself what I should and shouldn't do, or maybe what I want to do. Let's see. So if I sew it together like this, I'm going to have a real long stretch on this side that's sort of uneven. But I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. Yeah, because I like the way that looks. So I'm going to sew these two sides together. I didn't need to trim down that side. Alrighty, so here are our two pieces. They are coming together nicely. I see how fun they're looking. I love to do crumb quilt. When I was a kid, I had that this fun way of coloring, and this reminds me a lot of that. So now, of course, we're gonna, I think, actually, I'm just gonna put these two edges together like that. We're gonna have a small piece. So, of course, I have to trim that off. Let me get a longer ruler. And just whatever angle. There's one nice edge. This one's going to need a little bit more cutting. There we go. And then I'm just going to sew all right, so here's our piece of crumb quilted fabric. I really love the way this little piece turned out. I'm going to save this. I'm going to use this later. Of course, you need to make it as big as you're going to need it for your pillow, for your throw pillow, or whatever you're using your piece of fabric for. I'm going to set this one aside. We did have this one left over, and I probably could have added it to this end. I'm not going to do that right now, but you can see how you just keep building and building until you get a big enough piece for your throw pillow cover. So here it is. I love it. And you can see here where the edges get longer and longer and longer as you make it bigger and bigger. In fact, I'm going to zoom out the camera a little bit so you can see the whole thing. All right, here you can see it a little bit better, excuse me. So now we're going to get ready. I'm going to trim this down, but not quite yet, because now this is big enough to use for my throw pillow. And now we're going to set this aside right now, and I'm going to make the back of the throw pillow as well, the envelope backing. All right, so we're going to start getting this back of the throw pillow ready. Remember, we cut these 13 inches by 11 inches. You're going to take one of the long edges that's 13 inches across, and you're going to fold it under so that the wrong sides are, this is the wrong side of the fabric. Fold it under about, I'd say, 1/4 inch, and you're just going to top stitch right along there to hold down. That gives you a nice clean border on there. So I'm just going to top stitch along that top edge, and I'm going to repeat that with the second piece for the backing. Okay, so here you can see where I just top stitched right, you can't see it because I used coordinating thread on this one, just right along that edge. These are ready. We're not putting the pillow, of course, together yet. We haven't finished it. Here you can see maybe a better shot of it folded over. This is the wrong side of the fabric, and there you can see how there's that nice edge. So I'm going to set these aside, and now we're going to start quilting that the crumb fabric. All right, so now we're going to get ready to quilt that top. And here's my piece of fabric. We have to cut this down to 14 by 14. That's not the size you're going to end up with. I just like to have it a little bit bigger because when I quilt this, it's going to shrink up a little bit, and I like to have some wiggle room when I'm trimming. So I'm going to get my ruler. Actually, I need my long ruler for this one. 14 by 14, and you just want to rotate around, make sure that you have it all the right size. Sometimes this piece is just big enough, I think. So I'm going to trim off this side first. Flip my ruler over the right way. Here we go. This always makes me a little nervous just because I don't want to mess it up, because then I'll have to add more. And then you're just going to cut 14 inches by 14 inches, lining up that side. And this should be right here. I'll just double check. I always like to double check my measurements. What is it? Check twice, cut once, or something like that. Yep. Okay, 14. See how I have a lot of extra? That's going to happen unless you did it, you know, ideally, but it doesn't really matter. I'll probably save that piece for later. And then I'm just going to rotate this around, lining up one of the straight edges. And then, let's see, now is the fun part. You can really look at your design and decide where you want your 14 inches to be, because this side's a lot longer than 14 inches. So, let's see, if I cut it here like this, it'll be about like that, and I like that. We'll stick with that today. Make it easy, for time's sake, when I'm making a video. I'm just going to line it up, trim off this edge. Again, more crumbs to play with. And then we want to double check. I believe this is right, but I will double check again. Another 14 inches. Yep, we got 14 by 14. What do you think? There we go. What do you think? There's my piece. That's what my pillow is going to look like. And now we're going to set this up to be quilted. So we need our backing piece of fabric with the wrong side facing up. And again, this is cut 14 inches square. That batting that we wanted, or that we cut, if you have any little threads on there, if you can, depending on what color your pillow is, you might want to remove those. And then layer this piece on top, lining it all up nicely to get ready to quilt. Now I'll probably press this, give it a quick press really quickly. And then I'm just going to do some easy cross hatch quilting. I need to change out my machine a little bit and add something. And then we're going to be ready to quilt this and then assemble the pillowcase. All right, so here's my piece quilted. Now, if you recall, I said I made this a little bit bigger than I needed. I want to have a square that's an inch larger than my pillow form. In my case, 12 inches is the pillow form, so I want this to be 13 inches. So I'm going to trim this down to 13 inches. See how it's skewed a little bit? You may have noticed I don't pin baste on a piece this small. That's completely up to you how you want to do it. I just prefer not to do that. The pins, I have problems with my right hand, so pinning is hard for me. So I skip it if I can. But now what I'm going to do is trim this down to 13 inches square. And this is very easy to do. I like my big square ruler. This is probably one, I love my square rulers. I love all my rulers, but I really love my square ones with a nice diagonal line. But I'm just going to square up this corner very easily, and then trim it down to 13 inches, just making sure I get all the back. So you can see, let me flip that over. You see how it switched, stretched a little bit, changed up a little bit. So you want to make sure you have batting all around. So let me try it again. There will be a few seams, like bigger, thicker seams to cut through, so you gotta handle that. All right, and then that's gonna be my starting corner, that corner I just trimmed up. And I'm just gonna find my 13-inch mark on my ruler. You want that extra inch larger than your pillow form because, well, first of all, when you sew the back and the front together, of course, you're gonna lose a 1/4 inch around all the side. So that you lose a little bit there, and then some pillow forms are puffier than others. So here, hold on, this is my 13. So you want to make sure you just have enough coverage, and you don't want it too loose either, so you don't want it too big. So there's my 13 inches, and that is ready. So here's the front, there's the back. So now we're going to start setting this up, and we're going to sew around the perimeter. So you're going to lay the pillow top, right side facing towards your up top. And then you're also going to need some pins. Remember, we're going to flip this inside out. So you want to line up piece 1 here. Just line it up. It's probably easier to do it this way. Okay. And I'm just going to pin really quickly here. I'll line it up with that one edge of the pillow. Okay. And then you're going to take that other half of the back of the pillow, remember? So here's that edge that we sewed together, that we sewed down so you have a nice clean edge. Again, now this one, I should have said that before. This is wrong sides facing up. So the backing you want to put, basically you're putting right sides together. That might be an easier way to explain it. Just lay this on top, and yes, there's a lot of overlap, but that's okay. You want that for your pillow. And then you're going to line it up on this edge. And I'm going to pin here. Now what I'm going to do for myself, I'm going to pin where these edges, this edge hits. I'm going to pin here. And the reason I do that is because I'm going to want to backstitch a little bit on there. That takes a lot of wear and tear when you're turning this pillow form inside out, and when you're putting your pillow, when you're turning the pillowcase inside out, but also when you're putting that pillow in. Those edges take a lot of wear and tear. So I like to backstitch there and there on both of those sides. So I'm going to rotate this around and pin here. And those pins, because I pin right there, tells me approximately where I need to backstitch. And then right about here. Now the nice thing about an envelope pillow is because you have this opening here, you don't have to worry about leaving an opening to turn anything else inside out. So the next thing I'm going to do now is sew a 1/4 inch around the entire perimeter. All right, so I've sewn around all 4 sides. Now I'm going to turn it inside out, but before I do that, I want to just trim off the edges a little bit. I just give them a little clip just so it's easier to turn over and hopefully make a nice sharp point in that corner. All right. This is always the fun part. And we're just going to turn this inside out. And we're going to get nice sharp corners. You might want to get like a chopstick or some, if you have like some, I wouldn't use a real sharp tool because you don't want to tear through the pillow that you just sewed. In fact, I like to use a pencil eraser. I'm going to run my hand all the way around there. Let me get that eraser. Actually, I'm going to use the top of this pen. It's sharp but not too sharp, so I'm not worried about poking it through. And you're just going to carefully poke out those corners. And another thing I just realized, be careful with that pen top. You don't want it to fall off and then stain your pretty pillow. Okay, I think that's good enough because I'm going to be putting binding on this one. So the next thing I'm going to do is just give this a nice quick pressing. But let me just show you what it looks like. You do not have to bind this. It's perfect as is. In fact, I'm debating whether or not I should bind mine, but you know what? I think I am going to bind it just to add a little finishing touch. Again, you don't have to bind it, but I'm going to press this really quickly just so everything matches up nicely, and then I'm going to bind, and the way I bind, let me find my binding. I do a 2.5 inch wide strip, and I fold it in half. And then for this one, I would actually machine bind it because you may need, this is going to take a little wear and tear. And I can throw this in the washing machine really quickly if it's on my sofa for a long time or whatever. What I'm going to do, and I'll show you, is I'll pin here, sew it on the front, then flip it over to the back, and then machine stitch it on the back as well. All right, so now we have this nice binding. I'm going to flip it over. We still haven't put our pillow together yet. And now we're just going to sew around the edge. Now, you can hand stitch this if you want, but because it's a pillowcase, I'd rather machine stitch it. And basically, you're going to machine stitch it just on that edge. Now, you will see it on the front, so you want to make sure your bobbin thread is matching, or, well, it doesn't have to. You can use whatever color you want. But you're just going to sew in just right on that edge there and just tack it down really carefully. You want to sew past the binding on the front, just so it doesn't catch the binding. And I'm going to use some clips here to help clip it down. And then I'm going to do that just all around the sides. All right. So here we go. Trimming off, make everything pretty because this is the outside, so you're going to see it. I'm just going to trim that off really carefully. You do see the back, like I said, you see that stitching on the back a little bit, excuse me, on the front side a little bit. And now comes the really fun part. And that is putting your pillow into your pillow form. And I always get a little nervous when I do this. It looks a little small, but we'll see. And a lot of manipulation. So go ahead. And again, this is why I backstitched these corners here, you know, when we were putting the top together. I'm just going to slip that in. And bring the other piece, and this is where it's really tight. Oh, it's stuck on the tags. That's what. I knew it was stuck on something. It just was not going. It was not happy. There we go. Pound it a few times. Oof. Okay. Ha. Just sort of try to get that in the corners a little bit better than I did. It's harder on this side because you have that piece of fabric underneath. There we go. Push it out a little bit. And in this corner, okay, I think that's, whew. You might even want to press that a little bit. There we go. There is my crumb quilted throw pillow. There you go. I love the binding. I actually love the way that binding adds a little extra, sort of a little finish to the pillowcase. You'll probably have to put it on your sofa, use it a little bit before it flattens out a little bit more. I love my little 12-inch pillow. You can make these in any size. Just remember, when I told you in the tutorial, you want to make your piece a little bit, an inch bigger before you start putting it all together. And I explained that more in the tutorial. But this is what it turned out. It matches my decor perfectly. I'm going to go put this on my sofa because I have a lot of grays now in my new sofa. But this is the pillow. Very easy to do. It has binding, so it gets a little extra nice edge on the side. I like that. And it's an envelope style, so it's easy to remove, so you can wash it. Thank you again to the sponsors, to Island Batik for the fabric, the beautiful Silverado Canyon fabric, which is available in stores at this point. I believe it is. This is September of 2022. And here's the quilt one more time. Thank you to Aurifil, Schmetz Needles, Hobbs Batting, and Deb Tucker Studio 180 for this month's project. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest free tutorials, free patterns, that kind of thing I do over here on YouTube. I love doing videos, and I really appreciate that you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.